All right, hey guys, welcome to the video. If you're new here, my name's Curtis, and today it's gonna be a little bit different. I wanted to talk about, obviously, fragrance, but, really like a mindful approach to fragrance. Understanding your fragrance's threshold and the impact that it not only has on you, but the others around you. It's about making the right choices. And I feel like, oftentimes we don't, not just with fragrance, but, with all aspects of our life, we don't think enough about the people around us. I feel like nowadays we live in a very selfish society. It's always me, I. And, I feel like that causes a lot of problems. And, it's always good to think about the people around you. It's about respect, being courteous. And I think, like, for me in my own fragrance journey, there's been many lessons that I've learned along the way that have kind of shaped my own thoughts on my approach to fragrances. And I just wanted to share those with you guys today. All right, and before I jump into this, I just wanted to say that, these are my own thoughts and opinions to my own approach with fragrance. It is by no means saying that, what this person is doing is wrong, or, that I'm right. It's just how I choose to approach fragrances. So I'm not criticizing anybody else's approach or, anything like that. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts and opinions about how my journey has kind of transformed in my approach to certain fragrances, then let's go. So I think first, you really need to identify your own personal threshold for fragrance, not only for you, but for the others around you. And to tell you a quick story, I'll be talking about this fragrance, which is OUD Satin Mood by MFK. And I had quite the experience with this fragrance the first time that I wore it. I ended up going to a cafe. I wore 3 sprays of this fragrance. 1, 2, 3, just like that. So I had quite the cloud around my head. And it was overwhelming for me, but I was thinking, I kind of sprayed it around my neck. That's why I have this kind of cloud around me. It's probably not affecting others the way it's kind of affecting me. That was the biggest mistake. I went to this cafe. Right when I got in there, I literally sat down and the whole cafe got up and left. I was projecting, pushing off so hard that, I was that guy, Mr. Offensive. Not only was I immediately embarrassed, but I realized the importance of, choosing the right fragrance for the environment that I'm going in, but also being a bit more mindful of how many sprays I'm doing. And really realizing that, okay, if this is overwhelming me, which it was, it's going to overwhelm the others around me. So that was a big lesson that I learned with this fragrance. And also too, maybe this scent profile wasn't the right one for that particular environment. This is a great fragrance and I really, really love it. But this is an This is an oud rose fragrance, and it's one that I think fits much better in more of an elegant setting, kind of in the evenings, maybe a date night, something like that. More of like an upscale type of event. And I wore this kind of during the day to a cafe. It was almost kind of like mid-morning time, which, it is what it is. But, fragrance is subjective. These are just all my thoughts and opinions and my experiences that I've had. But yeah, it definitely was not the right choice, not only in terms of fragrance scent profile, but in terms of the amount of sprays I did in the environment that I went into. But if you do choose the right environment, you pick the correct amount of sprays, this can be a gorgeous scent to wear. And it's definitely one that I recommend, and hence why I still have it in my collection, because I do love this fragrance. Next is kind of talking about a topic that gets overlooked, I think a little bit too often, and that's fragrance fatigue. I think it happens to all of us to some extent or another. And I think we're quick to say, oh, this fragrance isn't performing the way I expected it to. And in some cases that may be the case, but I think more times than not, it ends up being fragrance fatigue. And why does that happen? Maybe it's because you're spraying your fragrance around your neck here and it's going right up in your nose. Maybe you're hitting your chest and it's going right up in your nose. I think being mindful of your fragrance application, where you're putting your fragrance, is really important in order to avoid fragrance fatigue as best we can. I mean, think about it. Like let's say you go over to someone's house and that person is a smoker. So they're smoking inside their house. So to them, they probably don't even smell the smoke anymore, right? They're so used to it. Their nose has become accustomed to it. They don't even smell the smoke anymore. But you going into their house, you're like, oh my God, this smells horrible. It just smells like smoke, right? Whereas you can really smell it, they can't. It's the same thing with fragrance. Like, you're gonna go through those times to where, and I'll talk about this fragrance in particular. This is Silver Birch by Amouroud. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous fragrance. I love this fragrance. However, I tend to go nose blind to this fragrance quite quickly. And I had worn this fragrance to work recently, and I was able to smell it, for about the first hour or so. And then after that, I couldn't. Coworker came up to me later. He's like, man, what are you wearing? Like, I can really smell it. It's pushing off, So the others around me were really, really able to smell this. I couldn't. And I almost considered reapplying this fragrance, which would have been the biggest mistake because this was pushing and projecting off quite heavily. I just went completely nose blind to it. So, being mindful of fragrance fatigue, knowing that it is a real thing and it can happen, and thinking about, okay, kind of like I said before, thinking about the places that you're applying this fragrance in order to avoid that fragrance fatigue for yourself as best you can. I think for me, a lot of times I tend to hit the neck and the sides of the neck and the back of the neck. But I think even more so recently, I've started to hit the back of the neck. I'll spray inside my shirt, like on my collarbone. And you're spraying inside your clothes, but that scent is still pushing out. People can still smell that, and I'm definitely catching whiffs of it. So, when I want to be a bit more, moderate with my scent bubble, it is still pushing out, but it's kind of subdued a little bit. And I think especially like when you're in a work environment, when you're in close proximity to people, you can consider options like that. If you don't want to be so loud with your fragrance, spray it under your clothes. Like, it's still going to push out. It's going to be slightly subdued because it's kind of pushing out through your clothes. And that's one thing I've definitely started to do recently. Spray certain pulse points that kind of, that provide that heat for your fragrance to push out, whether it's, on your arms or on the back of your legs, behind your knee. Those places work great too, especially like in the summertime. If you're wearing shorts, like I tend to hit my legs often. So that way there's not so much concentration up here around my head. I'm still having a good sillage and scent bubble, but it's not going up my nose to where it's causing me that fragrance fatigue. But man, I really, really love this fragrance by Amouroud, Silver Birch. This is a gorgeous wear. It's basically, you can wear this one anytime. It's a great one and I love it. Next up, it's about fragrance application. How many sprays and the routines that you get into. Now, things to consider are like fragrance concentration, the scent profile of fragrance. Now, there's some fragrances that I might spray only one time, and there are some fragrances that I might spray 6 times. And that really depends on the concentration, the environment that I'm gonna be in, the duration of the event, how long am I gonna be out? All these factors go into consideration when I'm choosing a fragrance and in terms of how many sprays I'm gonna be doing. And knowing that when you're thinking about the concentration of a fragrance, obviously, you know, there's eau de toilette, there's eau de parfum, parfum, extrait, you know, and I have all of those in my collection. But knowing that just because it's an extrait doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the strongest or have the biggest impact, not only on myself or the others around me. Like, I have some eau de toilettes or eau de parfums that push out much heavier than some of the extraits I have in my collection, and vice versa. You know, I have some extraits that really are quite impactful, not only on myself, but the others around me. So it's taking all that into consideration. You know, am I going to be in an event outdoors versus indoors? How close am I going to be to the people around me? And understanding the company that you're going to be in. You know, what works for this person may not work for everybody else. So understanding, you know, the friends that you're going to be around, and their sensitivity to fragrances are all things to consider. So to give you a quick story, this is something that happened this past week. So I was going to a dinner event for work, and I chose to go with Sultan Vetiver by Nishane. I thought, oh yeah, you know, it's a professional type of, you know, vetiver scent. So what I did was I ended up doing 3 sprays of this fragrance, and I didn't take into consideration that this is quite a polarizing scent profile. I mean, this is a slap of vetiver in your face. And for me, you know, this comes off very professional, masculine. But I do understand that this is quite an intense, and it can be an overpowering experience for many people. And I quickly realized that that's exactly what it was. I was at this dinner party, we sat down. Both of the people around me were not wearing masks. After I sat down, they both put on masks. And I could kind of see them kind of putting their hand over their nose. So number one, I think I probably chose a fragrance that was a bit too, number one, overpowering. And I think it was too polarizing of a scent profile. Now, what are ways around that? I could have dialed down the sprays a little bit. Maybe just 1 spray would have been appropriate. And in hindsight, 1 spray probably would have been plenty. And I should have been, you know, this is a dinner party. You know, when you're eating, you don't want to be inhaling the fragrance, right? You want to be able to enjoy the scents and the natural aromas of the food. And I think I pretty much spoiled that for everybody. So that was a huge lesson learned, a lapse in judgment when I was thinking about the fragrance for that particular environment and event, and, you know, how many sprays to do for that particular environment. And, you know, I knew I was going to be in close proximity to others, and I should have thought about that a bit more before I did that many sprays. But I do love this fragrance. This is one of my favorite vetiver fragrances, but, you know, I do also know that it's very polarizing, and not everybody is going to love this type of scent profile. And this kind of ties in to Sultan Vetiver. And for me, again, I obviously messed up with that. You know, I feel like I kind of oversprayed, which had such a negative impact on the others around me. And, you know, obviously I felt embarrassed about that. And I even kind of started to sweat a little bit. To give you another story, I wore OUD Maracuja by Maison Crivelli. This is, you know, kind of a fruity, oudy fragrance. You get a heavy blast of passion fruit, and then you get some kind of ambery, leathery kind of oud that kind of pushes forward. It is a gorgeous wear, but it is a very easy fragrance that if you overspray this, you are going to easily not only annoy people, you will overwhelm them, you will push them away. And I've learned the hard way with this fragrance, but what I chose to do with this one yesterday was one spray, and it wasn't even a full spray. It was like a 3/4 spray, but man, that had such a positive impact. People really, really enjoyed this fragrance. I got a few compliments from it. And, you know, for me and my own approach, I really believe in less is more. I don't want to be that guy who is overwhelming someone with my fragrance. So I was very mindful of how many sprays I did yesterday, and it had such a positive result for me. You know, I don't want to shove my fragrance in your face, you know, and the people are like running away. I'm like, no, smell this, smell this. You know, I don't want to be that guy. You know, I know the power of a fragrance like this, and basically all the fragrances from Maison Crivelli, the X straight line that they have, are beastly, nuclear. So for me, less is more with fragrances like this. I know the power of them and how quickly they can become overwhelming. So, you know, I was very mindful of that when I was, you know, choosing this fragrance, but also thinking about how many sprays should I do. Bottom line is, you know, I think I found a style and approach that works best for me and my style, while keeping, you know, consideration of the others around me. Now, obviously I'm not perfect and I still make mistakes, you know, hence the story with Sultan Vetiver. But, you know, it's a constant learning process, and I'm learning as I go. I do misjudge things sometimes, you know, maybe I kind of misjudge the strength and power of certain fragrances, or, you know, I don't take into consideration as much about fragrance fatigue as I should, but I try to be as mindful and make, you know, the right decisions as best I can. But yeah, these are all things to consider when you're choosing a fragrance. You know, I hope my story time and thoughts have been useful in some way. If they haven't, that's fine too. And again, you know, this is just my approach and how, you know, I go about choosing a fragrance and the things that I think about when doing so. And again, it's no criticism towards other people who do things differently. It's just the way I choose to approach fragrances. All right, guys, so that's all I have for you for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's content. And let me know down in the comment section, how do you typically choose fragrances in your approach? Do you think about the others around you? I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Well, I hope you guys are staying healthy and well, and I'll see you in the next video.